Hello Hunters, Azortharion here and welcome to an update from the War Within beta. Since I made my 4 videos going over the Hunter rework linked in the doobly-doo, Blizzard has made some changes primarily to Beast Mastery and Survival Hunter, but also a little bit for Marksmanship / Sentinel that addresses some of the feedback from the community and also fixes some relevant bugs that will slightly update what I had to say in my 4 videos earlier. So in this video, I'm just going to go over each bit of changes that's happened and sort of point out in the tree how it's changed, how my feedback on it has changed, whether I think it's good or bad, and so on and so forth. As always, leave your own thoughts in the comments below, and also let me know what future videos you'd like to see in the comments below. And yeah, if you want to support what I do here, please check out my Patreon, also linked in the doobly-doo below. And until then, let's get into it. So first off is Trailblazer and Pathfinding have swapped locations in the Hunter class tree. So this happens down here in the bottom left. So it used to be the Trailblazer was here and Pathfinding was down here. And it basically locked Pathfinding behind either Kindling Flare, which is a super niche sort of flare buff, or Trailblazer, which Trailblazer is nice to have, but it's not really useful in combat, but it is convenient outside of it. So this is just an overall positive change. That means we don't have to lock ourselves into this passive movement speed for a utility talent in order to get pathfinding, which is what we really want. So essentially this, basically for combat users, this basically gives us another talent point to use on utility. Alright, next up is fixed an issue that was causing Posthaste to only grant 25% movement speed. It now grants 50% movement speed. Alright, so those of you who watched the class tree video will recall that I pointed out that Posthaste got nerfed, but it turns out that was actually a bug and I was not aware of this. So Posthaste is now back to providing 50% movement speed for 4 seconds after using Disengage, whereas before I assumed that they had nerfed it to 25%. This seems to be a common bug where talents that were turned from 2-pointers into 1-pointers were getting their old 1-pointer effects, and that was not intended. So we're getting the 2-pointer effect for just 1 point on Posthaste now, which is just great. Fixed an issue that was causing Born to be Wild to falsely claim to reduce the cooldown of Survival of the Fittest. Alright, so those who watched the class tree video and were probably super hyped would recall that I mentioned that Survival of the Fittest now can have a 1-minute cooldown. Well, that was based on Born to be Wild, the wording of this talent, which used to include Survival of the Fittest. Now in the beta this wasn't actually working, but we had just assumed that it was a bug that it wasn't working and reducing the cooldown of Survival of the Fittest. Turns out that was not a bug and that the tooltip was just wrong. So this is a bit of a nerf to the insane survivability buff we got. It's still a big survivability buff, so I wouldn't see any cause to doom. But of course, going from a 1-minute CD on a powerful defensive to a 1.5 minute is a pretty significant nerf. So this is a little bit of little bit sad, but perhaps understandable. Yeah. Alright, next up we're getting into hero talents. So Sentinel for survival and marksmanship has been nerfed, particularly on AoE. Symphonic Arsenal damage reduced by 40% and Symphonic Arsenal target cap reduced to 5. So let's just remind ourselves what that was. And to do that, I'm just going to pull up Sentinel. So Symphonic Arsenal is this one down here. Multi-shot, or in the case of survival, it would be Wildfire Bomb. No, multi-shot, Carve, and Butchery. Discharge arcane energy from all targets affected by Sentinel. So Carve doesn't actually exist anymore. So it would be Butchery in this case. So when you use Butchery, or in the case of marksmanship, multi-shot, it discharges arcane energy from all targets affected by a Sentinel, which is going to be pretty much everything you're in combat with almost all the time, dealing 34% of attack power arcane damage to up to 5 targets within 8 yards. So this used to be much more attack power. It was actually so powerful before that it was better for marksmanship hunters to press multi-shot on single target compared to casting arcane shot. That was how powerful Symphonic Arsenal was if you were Sentinel. So this being nerfed was always going to happen, and obviously reins in a little bit of marksmanship and survival's really OP AoE damage. But Sentinel is still a seriously powerful hero talent tree, and I imagine for both of those specs, it's going to be used pretty much like 95% of the time. Because it, like, while Symphonic Arsenal was really strong, it wasn't even the main thing making Sentinel so strong. Like, Sentinel baseline is really strong, and Lunar Storm is insanely strong, doing tons of damage and also providing you a 10% increased damage done with significant uptime. So a nerf to Sentinel, but it's almost more of a gameplay thing that they nerf this, because this just ensures that you don't have any degenerate gameplay with marksmanship using multi-shot on single target. Although it's still pretty close. And just reins in the target cap a little bit. But yeah, I think not going to have a make or break difference to Sentinel's viability going forward. Alright, next up we're hopping into Beast Mastery. So these are some general Beast Mastery talent tree changes. So this is similar to the Posthaste thing. Thrill of the Hunt now properly stacks up to 3 times. So if you watched the Beast Mastery video, you'll recall that I said it now stacks up to 2 times. Well, that was also a bug, and it was because, just like with Posthaste, we were getting the old 1-pointer instead of the old 2-pointer for the cost of 1 point. So now Thrill of the Hunt stacks up to 3 times. This means that there's no difference between Frenzy, which stacks to 3 times, and Thrill of the Hunt, and you can track with whichever one you want in your UI. No gameplay change here. Obviously a little bit of a net damage buff, but I wouldn't really read that much into tuning at the moment, but it is, strictly speaking, a damage buff. Same goes for War Orders. So War Orders now properly grants a 50% chance to reset the cooldown of Kill Command. So on the tooltip, this used to be 25%, once again, because there was the old 1-pointer. Now it's 50% again, and that's just great. The position of Hunter's Prey and Wild Call have been swapped. So this is occurring down here. So Wild Call is now over here, and Hunter's Prey is now over here, and those used to be flipped around. So this means that, well, essentially makes Wild Call a bit more accessible, which is nice for frenzy management. It makes it a bit less out of the way, and it means you'll pretty much have it in every single build. The problem before was that you pretty much needed, because the only way to get the Training Expert, which is other than Beast Cleave, was to stack into Hunter's Prey, which is what makes Kill Command sometimes give kill shots, which is not necessarily what you wanted. So, whereas Wild Call is pretty much always nice to have, both on single target and AoE, Hunter's Prey is a bit more of a single target, so the fact that they put this sort of out of the way here and put Wild Call, the more universally useful talent, closer to the middle, is just an overall good thing. So, good change. Next up is Killer Cobra in Gate 2 has been renamed to Venom's Bite. So this was just a funny little thing where, this Killer Cobra down here and this, which is now called Venom's Bite, they had the same name before. Well, now it has been renamed. It's called Venom's Bite, which is an appropriate name. Overall, a good change. Next up is the developer's note. So this concerned Huntmaster's Call. So let's read it first. Huntmaster's Call has had the following adjustments. So Fenrir's Ravenous Leap damage. So this is let's remind ourselves what Huntmaster's Call does, and then we can look into the nerf. So every 3 casted die beast sounds the Horn of Valor, summoning either Hades or Fenrir to battle, 50-50 chance on which you get. Hades just increases the damage of all your pets, so very straightforward, very passive. Fenrir would pounce your primary target, inflicting a heavy bleed that deals basically, used to be 4 kill commands worth of damage, now it's closer to 3, and also grants you 10% haste. So they just nerfed that bleed damage. It's still really strong, but it's not quite as strong as before. And they also roughly halved the pet damage increase that the Hades proc would give you. So just a straight up, 30 to 50%, I guess split across 40% nerf to the talent overall. This is obviously huge. It's still a really good talent though, and we'll pretty much pick it in most situations. And the baseline attack damage of the 2 Hades and Fenrir pets that you spawn has been normalized and reduced as well. But this talent, you could easily be worth, 10-15% of your overall damage before, so the nerf is justified in my opinion. Hunters have new visuals and sound effects when Huntmaster's Call summons Hades or Fenrir. That just means you can sort of hear which one you summoned without needing to rely on your UI, so this is all good. Kill command damage increased by 8%, so this actually shows, this is a bit interesting, because it implies that they're actually doing numerical tuning already, because obviously they nerfed a few talents, they also buffed some others, and now they're buffing baseline abilities to basically compensate for the damage loss, which suggests to me that they're actually doing numbers tuning now. And that might inform your future feedback. If you feel that a talent is doing too low damage, or a spec or something is doing too low damage in certain situations, the fact that they're doing numerical tuning now means that I think they could actually use your feedback on this. So when you do feedback on the forums, or if you write in the comments, I don't know if they read my comments or watch this video, but if they do, maybe you'll want to leave it there. Numerical tuning is something you may want to take into account, because until now, the thinking has generally been, numbers tuning will come. Right now, we're just focused on feedback and so on. Well, I think maybe with roughly a month and a half to go until pre-patch, maybe numbers tuning is starting to rear its head. Anyway, also Diabetes damage increased by 10% in the same vein, sort of compensating with some of the other nerfs. And Diabetes now grants 20 focus. So basically when you press Diabetes, we now generate 20 focus. This is essentially the first on-demand, I could be wrong about this historically, but I believe it's the first on-demand focus generation that Beastmaster has had in a long time. Obviously, Barbed Shot is technically on demand and it generates focus over time, but you have it pretty much, 100% uptime on Barbed Shot. So effectively, it ends up being like passive regen, even though it is from a button you press. Diabetes does have a 20-second cooldown, so I guess it's not right to say it's on demand, but it's quite regular, and you just add some extra focus to your rotation. Not really sure that Beast Mastery needed the extra focus. I don't really think it's, let's say, a huge buff. I think it'll contribute to our focus capping issues a little bit, but more focus is never a bad thing, and I don't think it's going to be so much that it feels bad because we're on the focus cap all the time. So overall, a good change. Alright, that marks the end of all the Beast Mastery changes. So in summary, they didn't address all the things the feedback I had. One thing that is actually, they put it in the survival notes, but it is, or unless I just didn't manage to read them. But in any case, so Explosive Venom, this talent here, it used to be every 5 casts of Cobra Shot or Multi-Shot will apply Serpent Sting to target's hit. Well, now this includes Explosive Shot instead of Cobra Shot, so now basically it used to be that this was a bit of a weird talent and that, okay, it was generally useful on AoE, because you're regularly multi-shot and so on, you're gonna have basically AoE Serpent Sting, this is great. But the Cobra Shot edition was a little weird, and it was also bugged on the beta where the Cobra Shot wouldn't actually apply properly. It was just a weird one. Well, now its function is much more clear. It's basically intended to be a way for Beast Mastery Hunters to spread Serpent Sting on AoE, which is great. It's every 5 casts of Explosive Shot or Multi-Shot, which I believe should contribute to the same counter. So let's say if you hit 4 Multi-Shots and then an Explosive Shot, well, that's going to trigger it. At least I certainly hope so. Because obviously Explosive Shot has a pretty long cooldown at 30 seconds, so if it didn't contribute, then it would be really bad. Yeah, so overall a good change. And it also, so if we don't have Hunter's Prey, which we may not in many single target situations, it does offer a more regular way, although not particularly regular, way of generating Serpent Sting uptime on a single target as well. But if we don't run Hunter's Prey and we only run Explosive Venom, relying on purely Explosive Shot, that means it's going to be basically every 2.5 minutes that we get 18 seconds of Serpent Sting, so very low uptime. So this could still lead to kind of degenerate situations, honestly, where, okay, let's say maybe this talent is worth picking on single target. I doubt it, but let's say it is. Well, to make use of it, it would basically entail casting multi-shot occasionally on single target to bring the counter up to 5 and basically speed that up, which is not great. But that depends on tuning, how, whether it ends up being running and that, but yeah, it's a little bit of a way. I mean, certainly, let's say we used it in Mythic Plus on a single target boss in Mythic Plus with our AoE build, where we're probably not going to run Hunter's Prey. Well, are we going to be casting multi-shot on single target bosses in Mythic Plus occasionally to put Serpent Sting up? Because it is the case that a multi-shot plus a Serpent Sting's worth of damage is worth more damage than a Cobra Shot if you just do the math. So I hope that's not true, but I can kind of see it on the horizon depending on the builds we end up running. Alright. Other than that, all the changes have pretty much been good. I think nerfing Huntmaster's Call is fair, and they did give us some compensatory buffs. They also addressed the feedback where Diabetes just feels like a very uninspiring button to press. It now generates some focus. Not that Beast Mastery generates a tremendous amount of focus. I think I would prefer to have seen it do some immediate damage when you summon the Diabetes, applies a bleed, a bit like Huntmaster's Call itself does. But 20 focus is certainly a start to making Diabetes a more interesting button to press. Every other change has pretty much been wholly positive. Threat of the Hunt now stacks to 3 times. That's basically another 2% crit almost globally. Warders will now cause Barbed Shot to reset the cooldown of Kill Command more regularly. This is good. Wild Call is now going to be a lock-in for most builds, if not all. With Hunter's Prey sort of relegated out here to mostly being a opt-in thing for single target rather than being sort of a necessary part of many builds. And And while the explosive Venom still potentially does leave some issues with the generic gameplay on single target bosses in Mythic Plus, it is better than it was before, and hopefully also not bugged. And they also fixed the differential tooltip, but that's pretty minor. Yeah. All right. Next up is survival. So let's hop into these changes. Let's hop over to the survival tree. All right. So first of all, Harpoon and Aspect of the Eagle are now baseline to Survival Hunter. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a like nakedness in the tree here, because there's basically some talents missing, and that's because these talents, Aspect of the Eagle and Harpoon, are now completely baseline, and this is just overall a good thing. It saves us 2 talent points, which is very generous, and it just means that we don't have to choose between 2 like really huge quality of life but not necessarily DPS increasing talents, and yeah, just overall a very good thing. Some bug fixes here with some spells like Fury of the Eagle and Explosive Shot that were not properly benefiting from Tip of the Spear, so these are just bug fixes that you would expect to work properly. And Fury of the Eagle does not consume a stack of Tip of the Spear until the channel ends. So this addresses an issue where, like, so obviously Fury of the Eagle is a 4-second channel that hits 9 times, and it felt pretty bad when you hit Fury of the Eagle and the first out of the 9 ticks would consume the buff, and then all the other buffs would not be, ticks would not be buffed. So that has obviously been clarified, and it's all good. Little bit of an animation and audio fix for Contagious Reagents. So Contagious Reagents is this thing that basically makes Serpent Sting spread, and you can imagine that if this was causing constant multiple sound files of Serpent Sting being applying at the same time, that would be quite obnoxious. They fixed that. Terms of engagement is now located where Harpoon used to be in the survival spec tree. Obviously, this just moves terms of engagement to Harpoon's old spot. And Grenade Juggler has been shifted 1 step to the side to where Aspect of the Eagle used to be. So a little bit of a reshuffling to account for the talents that are now made baseline. All good. I'm actually going to skip a few steps here just to read this because I think it's more relevant to read first. Flanking strike damage increased by 40%, so obviously good. Now costs 20 focus and generates 2 stacks of Tip of Spear. So this is almost word for word Thymon's feedback on survival that you'll see in the survival review video that I have in the description below. So obviously just great. So the problem with flanking strike was that it generated a ton of focus, and it was just like we already have a ton of focus generation and just generally like generator vibes by pressing kill command, which resets itself so often that it actually felt kind of bad to loop flanking strike into the rotation, given that it also generated a ton of focus and also obviously gave Tip of the Spear. Well, now instead of being like a super juiced kill command, flanking strike is a super juiced, let's say, Mongoose Bite, like basically a spender of focus, 20 focus to be exact, that also generates 2 stacks of Tip of the Spear and also gets an additional damage bonus from Tip of the Spear. So overall, like totally positive change. And this leads into the next thing, which is Exposed Flank has been redesigned. So Flanking Strike exposes a weakness in the enemy's defenses, causing it to strike 2 additional targets at 100% effectiveness. So instead of only causing kill command to cleave, but it still does that, it's now a really powerful spender of focus that does a crap ton of damage. Like Flanking Strike is going to feel awesome to press. Generates 2 stacks of Tip of the Spear, and it can cleave on up to 3 targets. Super, like, Flanking Strike is now a super satisfying button to press every 30 seconds, and it still causes kill command to hit 2 additional nearby enemies for 10 seconds. Which is a bit more of a passive thing, as we'll see later on. Some things have changed with the GCD bloat of survival in the War Within, but overall, all good. This one we've already talked about. Explosive Shot now benefits from and consumes Tip of the Spear properly. Alright, next up, Developer's Note. So here's what Blizzard has to say about the forthcoming changes. The following changes are targeted at smoothing out survival's rotation such that you can reasonably maintain a spell priority, aren't munching procs, and will have to more actively manage your focus economy. We will continue to read feedback and adjust survival's action and focus economy as necessary. So if you'll remember from the video, this was pretty much, our main feedback about survival is that there was insane GCD bloat. Optimal play of survival was not obvious at all because you had all these things available to press, constantly resetting each other's cooldown, and basically the steps that are now coming up are going to help resolve that. So let's get into it. So this is more of a bug fix. Fixed an issue that was causing flankers advantage to basically kill command was resetting its cooldown too often. This is now fixed, so yeah. Well, flanking strike buff we've talked about. Wildfire Bomb now costs 10 focus. So and I guess this is a good thing to keep in mind for all of these changes. A lot of these changes are going to read as nerfs because they are, but you have to imagine that they're going to buff. So let's just imagine, and I'm not necessarily saying this is true because Blizzard's tuning has been so historically. I'm not a Blizzard apologist by any means, but let's just assume that they're going to tune survival to wherever it would have been before. So think of all these changes they're making that are effectively nerfing some talents as gameplay improvements rather than damage nerfs. And obviously this means we'll have to trust Blizzard, for better or for worse, that they will ensure that, survival remains competitive going into the War Within. Anyway, Wildfire Bomb now costs 10 focus. So this basically ensures that when you press Wildfire Bomb, which will do a ton of an AoE, it will be, and you're at the focus cap, it will keep you off the focus cap. So let's say you're focus capped before. If you cast 2 Wildfire Bombs back to back, which you will sometimes do in AoE, you will not waste a ton of focus. Now you will, now you'll waste no focus. It used to be the case that you would waste quite a bit of focus. This is just going to make focus management a relevant part of playing survival and AoE, which is a good thing. Next up is Explosives Expert. Now reduces Wildfire Bomb by basically up to 2 seconds instead of 4 seconds. So once again, this was a problem before where basically we would have too many bombs available to us that we could not execute other parts of the survival gameplay loop, which included, weaving in kill commands for Tip of the Spear to buff those bombs. If we did that all the time, we would just be overcapped on bombs all the time, which didn't feel good. So Explosives Expert goes part of the way to fixing that by reducing the cooldown a bit less. Furthermore, Wildfire Infusion now makes kill command reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 1 second per cast instead of 2 seconds. So once again, less Wildfire Bomb in cooldown reduction, which means fewer Wildfire Bombs, which means obviously less Wildfire Bomb damage, but crucially, it means that we actually have time to cast other abilities that make those Wildfire Bombs more powerful. So this is a good thing. Same thing with Grenade Juggler. It now makes Explosive Shot reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 2 seconds instead of 4 seconds. All part of the same sort of general fix of these. Also, Grenade Juggler now causes Wildfire Bomb to have a 25% chance to also fire an Explosive Shot at your target at 100% effectiveness. So it used to be the case that, so now the Wildfire Bomb will just fire the Explosive Shot rather than having a chance to reset its cooldown, which basically means that's one less global we will regularly have to spend on Explosive Shot, which reduces the GCD bloat issue, which is a good thing. And this is a big one as well. So Bombardier now grants 2 free charges of Explosive Shot after Coordinated Assault ends. It used to be that when Coordinated Assault ends with Bombardier Talented, as we talked about in the survival video, you'd basically have to back-to-back prepare to cast 4 Explosive Shots in a row, which paired with especially the pre-nerfed Grenade Juggler, which basically just massively overcap your Wildfire Bomb cooldown and just not be fun to play at all. Well, now it grants you 2 free charges of Explosive Shot that you can use whenever you want, and overall, just a great change. So yeah, that's it for survival. Overall, really good changes. I pretty much have no main complaints. There will be future videos in which I sort of revisit the hero talent trees individually, and also the tier sets, because of course I did a little bit of a tier set review video. But that was before all these Hunter reworks, and of course the landscape has now changed a little bit. Same goes for the hero talent tree reviews. Expect new new versions of those videos. And in those videos, I will probably also, capture some of the feedback of the community, read the Discord, read the forums, and basically try to bring, Blizzard, if they're watching this, but also just you guys watching this video, an idea of what the community thinks about all these things, because while this is primarily my opinion, also try to loop in other people's opinion. But so far, honestly, really positive on all fronts. Beast Mastery, the nerfs have been fair, the buffs to compensate have been fair. They addressed some of the key feedback, which was Die Beast feels bad to press. Some of the talent ordering didn't make quite sense. Some issues still remain that I'll talk about in my Beast Mastery 2 video, but they're making steps in the right direction, and I hope that this will continue until the pre-patch on July 30th. Same for survival. It looks like they really read and understood the feedback concerning GCD bloat, and they made some really relevant changes to sorting that out. I think time will tell on the beta if they did enough here, but it's a huge step in the right direction, and I really like the new flanking strike, because it just feels so much like it's like the damage increase, obviously much stronger to press, but also the fact that it costs focus I know that's technically a nerf because having more focus is better than having less, but it's just gonna make it feel much better. And assuming they're gonna, tune everything accordingly to like parity with how it was before, or however they want it to be, this is overall really great. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Really excited about these changes. I hope it continues and this is not the end of them listening to Hunter feedback for the rework. And yeah, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Leave ideas on future videos, aside from the ones I've already mentioned, in the comments below as well. If you want to support what I do, please check out my Patreon. If you want my coaching to help your gameplay in PvE for Hunters in the War Within, it's very useful. And also if you want my Hunter UI and much more. Until next time, I wish everyone a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. I'll see you boys and girls next time. Bye-bye.